guys, it's Reagan and welcome back to another video. Today I'm coming at you with my book haul. Funnily enough, I thought I had done a pretty decent job not accumulating too many books this month. However, when I began to put all the books I needed to talk about together for this video, I quickly realized how wrong I was about that. But nonetheless, I have so many exciting books to show off today, some pre-orders, some incredible new releases. So without further ado, let's go ahead and dive right in. The first set of books I'm going to be chatting about are, of course, the February selects for Book of the Month, who I'm also partnering up with for this video. If for some reason you're not aware, Book of the Month is an online bookish subscription service. They essentially, every single month, curate a list of 5 new releases on their site from a variety of different authors, genres, and voices in the community. They're always new releases, they're always hardcover, and they're sent directly to your door. If you're not interested in any of the titles for that month, it's also super easy to skip, but between their new releases and 5 main titles and their backlist, there's always something amazing to check out. I, of course, have an offer code for you guys. If you use the code PERUSEPROJECT, you can get your first box for only $9.99. I will have that and a link to their site linked down below. Let's go ahead and jump into the 5 main selects for the month of February. There are truly some incredible titles to pick from this month. The first 2 books I'm going to quickly mention both have to do with marriage, the complexity of marriage, and honestly about 2 marriages on the brink of falling apart. The first is Vladimir by Julia May Jonas. This follows 2 professors, and after some adultery as well as an infatuation with a new young novelist on campus, things begin to get very, very complicated. This is said to be very seductive and dark as well as funny. Sounds intriguing. The other selection is The Golden Couple by Greer Hendricks and Sarah Pekkanen. This, I believe, is more of a thriller story centering around a marriage that's falling apart, and they begin to see a very unusual therapist, but once the sessions begin, their marriage might not be the only thing that's in danger. Next 3 books I would say are my personal favorites for the month. The first one was high on my list. I actually had it pre-ordered and I had to cancel my pre-order when I realized it was one of the February selects, so I'm so excited about it, and that is A River Enchanted by Rebecca Ross. This, I would just say, is like a picture perfect example of a synopsis and a style of book that always calls out to me. A lyrical, dark, sort of fantastical story set on a remote island with a strange mystery, which is basically young girls on this island are being kidnapped by ghosts. And our main character, who is a bard, is brought back to this island, and he is basically chosen by the community to be one of the only people who can solve this mystery, but he has to work alongside his childhood rival, Adria, to help solve this case, and I do believe they become a little bit closer as the book goes along. So enemies to lover, which is always one of my favorite romantic tropes. This just sounds kind of bizarre, very lyrical. I love kind of a bard-centered story. I always like when folklore or even storytelling is woven into the narrative itself. I've heard really good things about this. I love the cover. I cannot wait to read this. I feel like this is right up my alley. Next select is a historical fiction, multi-generational family story, which is another thing I just love so much, and that is Peach Blossom Spring by Melissa Fu. This book is set across continents, across many decades, and also follows 3 generations of one family. First, this novel is set in China in 1938, and we follow Mei Lin and her young son Ren Shu, who are forced to flee their home with the approaching Japanese army, and they basically struggle to survive as they travel through the war-torn countryside. Fast forward many years later, this young boy Ren Shu has grown up and has actually moved to America and has changed his name, and now his daughter is beginning to ask questions about his childhood, and he sort of is refusing to sort of share those stories, but his daughter Lily is really wanting to know about their family, their heritage, so she can also become more connected with their family. This is said to be a bold and moving look at the history of modern China, told through the journey of one family. It's about the power of our past and the hope for a better future, and this haunting question, what would it mean to finally be home? I love multi-generational family tales. I also really enjoy historical fiction. This sounds like it's going to be very emotional, but also a fantastic read. And then the last book you're able to select from this month is Don't Cry for Me by Daniel Black. And this, again, is said to be an incredibly emotional tale about empathy and forgiveness, but structurally I believe this book is written in the form of letters. We basically follow 2 main characters. The first is Jacob, and he's actually on his deathbed, and and he has decided to actually write his only son, Isaac, many letters kind of documenting his life, but also in hopes of making amends. And through his letters, Jacob is hoping to share the unspoken truths that reside inside of his heart. Specifically, this book is said to have piercing insight and profound empathy that illuminates the lived experiences of Black fathers and queer sons, offering an authentic and ultimately a hopeful portrait of reckoning and reconciliation. Cry for Me is a monumental novel about family trying to grip love's hard edges, and it honestly sounds incredible. Alrighty guys, those are the 5 selects from Book of the Month this month. Again, I will have a link to their site as well as my discount code down below, but without further ado, let's go ahead and dive into the rest of the books I have picked up recently. The first book I have to show off was an automatic pre-order. I am literally reading this book next and I truly cannot wait, and that is Akata Woman by Ninendi Okorafor. I love the Akata Witch series. I read the first one a few years ago. I'm currently in the midst of book 2, and it's just so good. I would describe this series as kind of between YA and middle grade. It follows our main character Sunny, who has just recently moved back to Nigeria with her family. Sunny herself is having a hard time finding where she fits in her new home. She loves playing soccer, but due to her albinism, she's not able to spend too much time outside in the direct sunlight. But at the beginning of book 1, she actually finds out that she has latent magical abilities, and from there she's thrown head first into a new magical world. She's beginning to attend magical lessons, she's making new friends, and also having to take on new magical challenges to save her community. I just could not say more positive things about this series. If you love a magical tale that has like magical school qualities and just like learning about a new magical world that lives alongside human culture, this is truly the series for you. It has wonderful writing, delightful characters, and just such an imaginative world. I'm going on and on. All that to say, book 3 just came out and I can't wait to pick it up. It's just so good. Next, I also grabbed Us Against You by Frederick Bachman. This is book 2 to Beartown, which I read last month and absolutely loved, so I just honestly immediately had to buy the second book in this series to know what's going to happen next to the residents of Beartown. This series is very much a community-centered story. It basically is set in a small remote town called Beartown in the wilderness of Sweden. It's very cold here and the people who live here are very proud, but unfortunately due to a variety of circumstances, the town is in decline. There are less jobs and less opportunities in general for everyone living here. But hockey is also king and also provides a lot of opportunity, not only for entertainment, but for people to find opportunity outside of the town. That being said, there was a lot of events that occurred in the first book. It's multi-POV to an extreme. And we basically in book 2 kind of take off shortly after the events of book 1 and continue to follow closely with this hockey club and the community itself. It's so good, very emotional. I loved book 1 and I can't wait to read book 2. I feel like it's going to destroy me. I literally sobbed reading Beartown, so I don't know if I'm emotionally prepared for this, but I also can't wait. Next up, I also grabbed The Fall of Babel by Josiah Bancroft. This is the 4th and final book to the Senlin Ascend series. I am not ready for this series to be over. I love it so much. But I did read the 3rd book. It was incredible last month and I'm dying to pick up this 4th installment because the plot is just everything to me. The whimsy and the uniqueness of the world and the writing. It has like a literary fiction quality to it, but the mastery of the high fantasy setting is just amazing. And just the escalation of the plot in this world is just so good. That being said, the Senlin Ascend series follows our main character Senlin, and at the beginning of book 1, he travels to this place called the Tower of Babel. He has dreamed of coming here his entire life. It's essentially this massive structure full of so many different floors. It is also the home to thousands upon thousands upon thousands of people. Unfortunately, right when he arrives at this tower with his new wife, they get separated, and the rest of the series is Senlin trying to locate his lost wife. This book is just amazing, and just the journey we have been on through the first 3 books, I can't wait to see how it's all going to wrap up. It's emotional. I love the characters. I love the world. I'm sad, but I also can't wait. Next, we have another very exciting purchase. I picked up a lot of books like continuations or just anticipated releases this month. But anyway, I also grabbed The Last Argument of Kings by Joe Abercrombie. Also, the 3rd and final book to the First Law series. I read book 2 last month, loved it, and I'm just really excited to see how this series is going to wrap up. This is a high fantasy grimdark story that is also multi-POV, and I would say the first one is heavily character focused, but the plot really did begin to accelerate going into book 2, and I'm really curious to see how things will wrap up. I know this is not the last book set within this world, so I know I have many books to continue to read and explore by Joe Abercrombie, but I just love his plots and his writing style, and again, because it is grimdark, there's just a lot of unexpected moments which I find to be very satisfying. But yeah, this is a story about war, conquest, self-interested individuals just trying to make it through the day. It's delightful, and I can definitely see why it's so hyped up, and I have joined the train. I love it too. The next few books were sent to me by publishers, which big shout out to them. I'm very grateful. The first is Age of Ash by Daniel Abram. This was a part of my most anticipated releases video, so I'm thrilled to have this in my hand. Daniel Abram is a part of the duo who writes the Expanse series, which is a sci-fi series I really enjoy, so I'm excited to check out some of his solo work, particularly because this is actually a fantasy release. I'm actually trying to avoid reading too much into the synopsis, but the overall hook of this new trilogy has really sold me. It basically takes place in one single walled city, and I think the entire trilogy occurs over one tumultuous year. I'm not sure if we're going to be following a lot of different POVs throughout each book, or maybe each book will focus on one character, but I think that concept is really cool, and I'm curious to see how it will play out. This also sounds like it's going to be heavily political, which in general is something I really enjoy when it comes to fantasy. So, new release, excited to add this to my shelf, but we'll see. The next two books I have to show off are books 2 and 3 within the Star Wars High Republic trilogy, which is an adult trilogy that takes place during the Golden Age of the Jedi and is set along the timeline of occurring before the prequel movies. I'm really looking forward to getting to these. I am a really big fan of Star Wars, and I've been wanting to kind of crack into the Star Wars novels, and these are a really good place to start. I also know that there is a YA and middle grade series to check out too, and I also really enjoy that all these are kind of written by different authors. I really want to learn more about the Golden Age of the Jedi and kind of see the organization before the fall, if you will. So really happy to add these to my shelf, and it sounds like a perfect series to marathon. Next, I picked up another very hyped new release, and that is Sally Rooney's Beautiful World, Where Are You? Sally Rooney is a very popular, very beloved author. Some say overhyped, some say just hyped enough, and I'm really curious to see where I land on that spectrum. I have a few books by her now, and I'm thinking about possibly doing a video where I read them all and share my thoughts. This is another kind of literary fiction story focusing on the lives of young people. It basically follows 4 individuals as they get together, break up, travel, fall in love, delude each other. Essentially a story about what it's like to be young and kind of exploring relationships during that time in your life. I've heard mixed things about this, but this is her newest release, so I'm just curious to see how it will land for me. So yeah, I did grab this, and I'm looking forward to seeing what I think. The next book I picked up just sounds really incredible. Again, another grand sweeping historical saga, and that is Beasts of a Little Land by Joo-hee Kim. This is an epic story of love, war, and redemption set against the backdrop of the Korean independence movement. This is a story that seems to have a few different characters and storylines that I think become interconnected. First, in 1917, set in the deep snowy mountains of Korea, we see an impoverished hunter actually save a Japanese soldier from a tiger attack, and from this instant their fates are connected, and from this encounter unfolds a saga that will span half a century. In the aftermath of this, a young girl named Jade is sold by her family to a courtesan academy in a last desperate attempt for them to survive. Here, Jade is now forced to basically live in the lowest echelon of society for women. As a young girl, though, she does befriend a young boy named Jung-ho, and they become very, very close over the years, and as they both come to age, Jung-ho becomes wrapped up in the revolutionary moment, and Jade herself becomes an incredibly sought-after courtesan. Now a performer that has the opportunity to gain marriage of noble birth, she must decide between kind of following her heart possibly, and also following someone who would risk everything for her. This is set from the perfumed rooms of courtesan academies to the modern cafes of Seoul. This is just a story that sounds incredibly intriguing and also really captivating, and again, I love kind of long, sweeping, generational historical fiction stories, so this immediately called out to me when I saw it in the bookstore. Next, I picked up a sequel to a book I have not not read yet in true Reagan fashion, but I really feel like I'm going to love the first one, so when I saw the second one on sale, I just had to grab it. That is The Hidden Palace by Helene Wecker. This is the sequel to The Golem and the Genie, which is a sort of very lyrical fantasy historical fiction tale set in New York City right about the turn of the century, following a golem and a genie and their unlikely connection through time. It just sounds incredibly unusual and beautiful, and so many of you guys have told me I would love that book. So again, I really do want to read that soon, and I just couldn't say no when I found the sequel for such a good price. It's also stunning, and I just can't wait to pick this series up. I feel like I'm going to love it. Next book is again just a perfect recipe for me. When I read the synopsis, I just had to buy it. This is a beautiful and lyrical reimagining of a very famous British folklore ballad. Again, all those things just sing out to me. Ha! Ballad. This is a book set in an ancient kingdom, and the king basically is beginning to realize that the land is turning against him, but he also knows that the fates of his 3 children are beginning to sing, and the land itself might be connecting to them. All 3 of these children fear a life of confinement in the family's keep, but it is also the last holdout and protector of not only them, but their people against the invading Saxons. But then it says, these 3 siblings are all entangled in a web of heartbreak and betrayal and must fight to find their own paths. The synopsis itself is like kind of vague, like we get names, we get places, but I think it's definitely more focused on presenting a vibe, and I am very sold on that vibe. Like, I want to know this web of treachery and heartbreak. I want to read about an ancient kingdom and 3 siblings with unusual powers given to them by the land itself. Tell me more. So yes, I bought it. Next up, we have another dazzling family saga set across a half a century. Again, I'm a simple girl. There are certain literary tropes that just always get me every time. I also saw this on a bookstore's Instagram. Like, it's a bookstore I really like. It's called Books Are Magic, and they specifically called this book out, and I got really intrigued ever since I saw it on there. And that is The Magician by Colm Tóibín. I believe this is an incredibly famous author. I have not read any other works by him, but this one just particularly sounded interesting to me. But I believe through this work, this is actually kind of trying to fill in the blanks of the life of a very famous author from the turn of the century, Thomas Mann. He wrote many works of fiction. One of them even won the Pulitzer Prize, but his life is a lot more complicated than that, in that he was actually not only a famous and beloved artist, he was also gay in a time period where that was not accepted. This is a book that follows him as well as his wife, that also tries to parallel his life with the release of many of his works and kind of draw connections between his existence in that moment and how that is translated into the art that he put out into the world. This has gotten a lot of praise, and it honestly sounds really intriguing, and I also like the idea of possibly reading this and then actually going back and reading some of this author's works and kind of comparing those experiences. But yeah, I was really intrigued when I saw this on the Instagram page that I follow, kind of outside of the usual books I pick up, but it sounded really unique and also kind of combines elements of fiction but also a lot of research, which the author had done to prepare to write this book as well, which is kind of a cool combination. And the last book I have to show off is a very weird fantasy novel, which again, I just love so much, and that is Mordu by Alex Phoebe. This book just sounds so strange in all of my favorite ways. The single line from the top of the synopsis also sold me. It says, God is dead and his corpse is in the catacombs of Mordu. We basically follow our main character Nathan. At the beginning of the story, his family sells him off to this individual in their town called the Master. The Master is a very powerful person full of magic, and he obviously holds a lot of influence, and he has this power because he's basically feeding off of this dead god in the catacombs of Mordu. Nathan himself kind of begins to realize this secret and is also beginning to harbor his own magical powers himself, and while the Master tries to plot against him, Nathan is a little more prepared than he was expecting. And now Nathan must fight through secrets, vendettas, and betrayals and make his way to the city where the god was murder and darkness reigns. Again, this sounds very peculiar, but I love a weird literary focus, kind of bizarre fairy tale-esque fantasy story, and I feel like this might deliver. I'm also hoping it has illustrations in it, which I am now flipping through. It does not have illustrations in it, but that's okay. The cover is also stunning. I'm really excited about this book. I'll let you know what I think. Alrighty guys, that is my book haul. Again, accidentally much larger than I was planning, but I hope you guys enjoyed this video and I will see you soon with another one soon. Goodbye!